Welcome back to the Tracy Tag. I am Tyler here with my brother Ryan, and today we are doing my second to last mock draft of the entire off season so far. It's been a lot of fun doing all these mock drafts. I have a fun one for you today. I put some new rule stipulations instead of just kind of I would say, boring one where it's like kind of run the mill, maybe more serious. This is a lot less serious, and I think we're going to go down kind of mythical land here. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. But before we do that, if you do like to put a couple bucks on some playoff games, as the NBA and NHL playoffs are coming up, click that link down below. BetUS has an amazing promotion going on right now for all of his first-time players of 125% match for the first 3 deposits. So click that link down below. And while you're at it, also like this video and subscribe to the channel to get notified whenever we create new content. We're trying to get to 3,000 subscribers by NFL Draft Night, which is April 25th. So just a couple weeks away. And I think as of now, we're about 150 away or so. So we're getting really close. So greatly appreciate all the support. And Ryan, let's pull up the PFF draft board here. So since this is my second to last one, Ryan and I, we're both going to come out with our final one on the Monday of draft week. That will be the serious one. That will be our March Madness bracket prediction. You know, this is the way that's going to go down and how we think the team's going to draft. This one, though, I think since this is my second to last one, put some rules around this, Ryan. I am going to have to pick a player I have not selected for any of the teams so far. Trades are open. I think this is going to be a lot of fun.
Okay.
And so starting off with this here, I am actually going to have to go. Obviously, I think I've done Caleb Williams for the Bears every single. We've been tracking it. I have done Caleb Williams for the Bears every single time.
Yeah.
So let's kind of go down some fun fantasy land here. Let's say maybe the Bears, they found something that they don't like about Caleb Williams, and then they really can see the upside of Jaden Daniels, so to say, and see how he's progressed so far. So let's go with Jaden Daniels here at number 1, going to Chicago Bears. There'll be another consistent trend kind of coming up here, I will say, with
Where is
Bears. He should be in the exact same spot that he's always been, like 22nd. Right there.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So ADP on PFF for Jaden Daniels is going to go up a little bit. That made this one kind of easy. Washington has never drafted Caleb Williams because he's never been available. So Washington goes Caleb Williams here. So now with your Patriots coming up here, I have actually done Drake May, Marvin Harrison Jr., and also Joe Alt to the Patriots here on all the positions. I've also done the Vikings to Drake May as well. So if we're going down this world, I do think the Broncos are absolutely in need for a quarterback here. It will take multiple firsts to move up there. I think this is a potential possibility. Broncos fans are very curious to kind of hear what your thoughts are on this. But you go up and you get your quarterback of the future. I think, honestly, Drake May being coached by Sean Payton, all the concerns, Ryan, that you've talked about with Drake May, or just things, you know, that just like kind of going through this draft cycle, you know, and just like you see some flaws that had to get worked out. Sean Payton, I think, is going to be the perfect guy for him. And so let's just force this trade. It would be multiple first-round picks moving up from 3 to 12. Honestly, you could probably do the same pick that the Niners did to the Jets.
The Dolphins. The Dolphins.
That's what it was. So multiple first-round picks. So the picks doesn't really matter. This is where the Broncos trade up here. They go and get their quarterback of the future. I think also, too, Drake May, I think he would also fit well in the Sean Payton type system. And I think now, moving on from Russell Wilson, Broncos regime is now the Nathaniel Hackett Broncos regime is now all officially gone, even with Jerry Jeudy being gone as well. So here, this is one. I couldn't think of anything super creative. I hadn't picked Rome Odunze going to Arizona. I do really actually like Rome Odunze in Arizona. I think for how polished of a route runner that he is, he would be the number 1 receiver in, I think, a lot of the previous draft classes, definitely last year's and potentially up there with Drake London in 2022 draft class. Maybe not Jamar Chase good in 2021. He would have been up there in the top 10. But having to go with Rome Odunze here, not too big of a splash. But so now that means that Marvin Harrison Jr. is here at 5. And you know who just traded away their star receiver this past week? Buffalo Bills traded away Stephon Diggs for a future second. They have future draft capital. It's actually also, too, if you go look at history and also if you can see what is behind me here, the Falcons have done a very similar type trade as well. They moved up and traded with the Browns, I think, from 27 to 6 in the 2011 draft and got a receiver who I would say is probably a Hall of Famer. I won't say his name. But so that draft, they traded away, pretty sure, their first, second, and fourth of that draft, and then a first and a second, I'm pretty sure, of the next year's draft as well. Potentially even some other stuff. They might have even sent a player here. So I think, let's just say it's something comparable there, and then you send it up to Los Angeles for the 5. Sports trade, who cares? And then now they go and get Marvin Harrison Jr. And now if you do look at that draft room, I think that is – I mean, because you'd have Marvin Harrison Jr., your new stud, easily replace Stephon Diggs. I really like Khalil Shakur. I liked who's the guy that they got? There's another guy that they got. I thought they signed him in free agency.
Curtis Samuel.
That's it, Curtis Samuel. Thank you.
Yeah.
They also have Dalton Kincaid there and Dawson Knox as well. That would be a full, complete receiving room. And if you're a team like Buffalo, you're kind of in a win-now situation. I mean, you are starting to rebuild the defense a little bit. But even, too, that was one of the best defenses last year, and you re-signed a lot of the guys that are in your front 7, a lot of the defensive tackles that are there and starting to improve. That's honestly where the Bills were dominant last year, just because the secondary was pretty injured. I know they moved on from some veteran guys. But now you go look at this offense, though. The offensive line's doing a lot better. They were running the ball, one of the best running teams in the league, running the ball the way that we've been talking about them. Like, they need to run the ball this way, not with Josh Allen, scrambling for his life and getting all those yards there. So here at number 6, I actually think this is a legit possibility here. Darren Waller is getting older, and I was actually kind of shocked I hadn't made this pick before. But Brock Bowers here going to New York, I think that would be a very interesting addition to a Brian Daboll offense with his just overall athleticism, his ability to control the ball over the middle of the field, and what we have seen Brian Daboll do with receivers who are not the biggest physical specimens, but have a lot of speed and are agile. I think he would open up the field even more for guys like Darius Slayton, Jalen Hyatt as well. And I was making that reference to their playoff run in 2022. So here actually at number 7, this was going to be an interesting one here. So as I maybe did a little foreshadowing earlier on, but Bears selected Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels and Malik Neighbors kind of had a pretty good connection this past year, I would say. So they're actually going to trade up with Tennessee here and go and get Malik Neighbors. I believe it was for the first and no. Oh, it was just a couple of points. I think it was for their first and then like a fourth. Their 122 fourth there to go and get. Yeah, that's fine. So they go and select Malik Neighbors here. Now, with how good their defense is and how they've been making all these moves now, I know they gave up one of their picks. They only have their 3rd left. But if we're being honest, though, Bears don't really need that much. You can go and look up their up and down their defense. I would put their defense up against a lot of other teams. Now you can look at that offense. They want a better offensive lines in the league. They've got a great prospect in Caleb Williams here. Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, and then now Malik Neighbors. I'd put that receiving room up against any receiving room in the league. So having some fun here. This trade, actually, I will say, after I did it, and I thought it was kind of crazy, but I thought about it more. I absolutely think that this is possible. If Joe Alt does fall to 8, if Tennessee doesn't take him here, or New York doesn't take him here, Dallas Cowboys are in a very interesting spot here to move up. They lost Tyron Smith, their left tackle. Tyler Smith is one of the best left guards in the league, so he could kick out the left tackle. But if they trade up here, and I think one thing that's going to be interesting too is they're going to need to figure out as well their cap situation with Dak Prescott. So they do maybe have a little bit of incentive to move on from next year's first, just to figure out any cap space. So I did the 24th, the 87th, and then the 1st and a 3rd from next year. Maybe that's not enough draft capital, so to say, and then just the 8th there. So some of those numbers will be picked out, but it's all about, I think, the vision of the player. But you would now then go and have your bona fide left tackle for next year to come. Your left side of the offensive line would be like dominant with him and Tyler Smith. You would protect Dak Prescott, or if you're not able to keep Dak Prescott, then you can move on from him and then you can maybe find some other ways. But this move, I think, would be under the assumption that you would probably sign Dak Prescott to a much longer contract as well. So here then with the 9th pick, Tennessee is up. They did miss on Joe Alt, but they still can go and get a guy like Talise Fuaga as well. They need help along all the offensive line, and so even going to get a dominant right tackle as well, I think would be perfect. Still, you have Nicholas Petit-Ferrer as the starting left tackle as of right now for the Tennessee Titans. So he could still stay there, and then you still just go and get good overall dominant presence on that offensive line to help with Will Levis protection. So sitting now at number 10. A lot of teams know that Minnesota's coming up next as well. And also, too, your Patriots are still sitting there. Maybe if they would want to get a quarterback, but they traded out, so maybe they'll wait. So a team like the Los Angeles Rams here, maybe they could trade up. They want to start preparing for their future. Go and get J.J. McCarthy here. I had them trade the 19th pick, the 52nd pick, and 154 for the 10th pick here. Let J.J. McCarthy sit for a little bit, still sit behind Matt Stafford as well. For some time, while he still develops, kind of hones in his skills, get more familiar with that Sean McVay offense. And then they also jumped Minnesota in the process, who I luckily hadn't drafted him with this year, but I think one of the guys who I'm just a big fan of just because we're Indiana fans, unfortunately. But watching Michael Penix here, I actually think this is one of the few systems I think he would be very successful in, just with the way that he plays football, then also the way quick Justin Jefferson is, Jordan Addison is. He's going to be available there. Bo Nix also would be available there. I could have gone with Bo Nix, but I had selected him going to the Vikings in a previous draft. So going with Michael Penix here. I still think this is a possibility. Maybe not at the 11th pick, but potentially at 23. So we'll have to kind of wait and see. Now at number 12 here, for your New England Patriots, I think they just need help kind of and have versatile offensive linemen. That's also something that they like to have, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong. But getting a guy like Troy Fautanu who can kind of move around. He can play left tackle, left guard, right guard, and potentially even center, right tackle. Versatile tackle. He seems like a New England Patriot, to be honest. So sitting here now at 13, the Las Vegas Raiders. I have them going with Quinyon Mitchell here, getting that future number one corner. The Raiders have one of the best defensive lines in the league now. And so I think just getting as much secondary help as possible. And I think a guy like Quinyon Mitchell with the upside, how much he has grown, he's been one of the best risers, I would say, of the entire draft. So I think he'd help out the secondary a lot. That actually is a legit pick. I mean, out of all the picks that I made here, potential moves, that one I think is fair to say that is actually a very legit possibility that he goes to the Raiders. I don't know. Maybe Cowboys want to trade up for Joe Alt. That could be a possibility. Anyways, back to fantasy land. I've gone, I think, offensive lineman. I think I've gone every offensive lineman outside of Joe Alt for the New Orleans Saints. So I try to go with a different mindset as well. And I think on the defensive side of the ball, I did think about receiver a little bit as well, potentially Brian Thomas Jr. But I actually had them going with edge rusher here. They drafted Brian Breezy last year in the draft. So I don't know if they'll go defensive tackle there, keep developing him. But I do have them going with the best edge rusher off the board with Dallas Turner. And I think they just need help on the interior on both sides of the ball. They're going up against this NFC South is potentially could be like the AFC South. All of a sudden, they could be one of the best divisions in the league at come the end of 2024. So having a quick pass rusher and him or Jared Verse, I think either one of those guys is interchangeable here. So sitting up now with the Indianapolis Colts, I have gone Cooper DeJean, Nate Wiggins, Quinyon Mitchell. I haven't gone Kool-Aid, actually. But I've done those three corners, so I'm going to go with the other corner. I haven't gone with Terrion Arnold here. Outside corner as well. I think a team like Indianapolis, they just need secondary help. Potentially could have also gone receiver as well. But I had already gone Brian Thomas Jr., and I also thought, too, with A.D. Mitchell, I didn't know if that would be kind of a similar overlap with Michael Pittman. Potentially, sorry about that.
Yeah.
So end up going with Terrion Arnold here. And so last pick, so one thing, too, that with Seattle Seahawks is they have moved on from some of the safeties, the Jamal Adams, for example. So I look at a guy like Cooper DeJean who's just super athletic. It's possible that teams do move him to a strong safety, free safety-esque role just with how athletic he is. And also the way, too, I think modern defenses are going. It's kind of almost like basketball. Like it's like all five guys need to be able to shoot the three, all be in motion. There's not like a true point guard, like a true center. I think Cooper DeJean might kind of fit that mold, a secondary type mold where there are guys who are designated certain spots, but you can really move him around in any position. If you need him to play outside, he can play outside, nickel, Like if Seattle goes up against San Francisco, he could be the guy. He covers George Kittle. Like that's just his role. He plays man on man against him the entire time. Similar how Kyle Hamilton played man against Travis Kelce essentially that entire AFC Championship game. So I think they go with a guy like Cooper DeJean here and help out in safety room, nickel room as well, and can just kind of move him around. So Ryan, this has been a little bit different. But I personally was just also getting a little bored of just kind of going with Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Marvin Harrison Jr. So I tried to mix it up a little bit.
Yeah.
On some of the ones, like for Arizona, for example, maybe they go Rome Odunze, but that's also more, I think, just a positional need as well.
Yeah.
And I still think no matter how much I see it, and then also I see Cardinals fans comment on our video say that they're not going to draft receiver, with the 4th overall pick. Potentially so. I kind of want to see it to believe it. But
I think that's ridiculous.
The prospects are so good. If they don't draft receiver, then maybe we need to follow up more on the GM philosophy for the Arizona Cardinals. But anyways, what are your overall thoughts so far on
I mean, it's definitely different given the fact that you haven't or that you're not taking players that you've selected in previous mock drafts for each team. I think it's gone really well. The Denver trade makes a lot of sense. Caleb Williams to Washington also makes a lot of sense given the Cliff Kingsbury connection there. My only thing, you've done a lot of trades. Maybe Chicago calls Washington and is like, hey man, we'll give you the first pick for a first and a second next year. Or like for the number 2 and a second next year. And then like you can have Caleb Williams or in that facet if they want to go somebody else. But all in all, I think a lot of the picks have been good. I just don't see Buffalo trading up though. I know this is in fantasy land. I know they look like they're collecting ammo to gear up or to move up, but I just don't see them moving up this high. There's too many quarterbacks in this class for them to be able to affordably trade up the way that the Falcons were able to in 2011 or 2007. Or I forget the draft that was, but
pretty sure it was 11. Don't let us know in the comments.
Yeah. The one I don't necessarily agree with is going to be Fuaga over Fatanu. I really like Tulise Fuaga for teams that need a right tackle specifically, but I do think the Titans really need a solid left tackle, and Fatanu would fill that role.
That's a good point, actually.
So that for me, I think was the only thing that I have seen that I disagree with, given the fact that this draft is taking place in another realm.
Well, and one of the things too that I enjoyed about going through this is it did get me to think about it in a different perspective. So to say, instead of it being like, okay, obviously I just value these guys, because I think one of the things too last year that I got stuck with is I got tunnel vision on like, oh, this player is better than this player. Yeah. And when that guy went 20 picks before the player who I thought was better, I was like, how could teams do this? So it also, I think, then to put it in a fun, little different perspective to get a little crazy with it, because it put in perspective for me, not just maybe Buffalo would want to go up and go get Marvin Harrison Jr., but just kind of reconfirmed to me, like, why would Los Angeles Chargers accept that trade and move all the way back down to 28? You know, unless it's like they're just like, this year's shot, let's just start preparing for next year. Or why would they even want to trade down even at all, potentially? So it kind of got me through some of those like little mental sweat exercises, and also too, it was just fun. I mean, it's just mock drafts. It's all fantasy land. But it was interesting too. And then, but for example, in all seriousness, a team like the Cowboys, we've talked about how good they were. They did lose a couple of other good pieces, but they're as much in a win now mode as any of the teams, I think, in the NFL. You go and get Joe Alt, you solidify that entire offensive line, and you give up a first next year, but also too, with the things going on with Dak Prescott and his cap situation, I think if I read it correctly, potentially $95 million in dead cap or something like that if they don't re-sign him. Or if they re-sign him, then they can kind of shift that money around then as well, like however that works. Maybe they don't need a first next year because they're going to need that money because people who on the first round are going to be getting millions of dollars. So it's interesting. It was just interesting to kind of go through this process, and we still got another half to go here. So going with Jacksonville, this is a guy I think I've been high on for the longest time. I'm glad that he's getting the first round recognition. Or I think he always was, but now moving up the board a little bit. But I think one of the things is so Jacksonville just signed Gabe Davis. They do have a guy like Christian Kirk, and so one guy too who is good. He is good. Jaguars Nation. But I think if a guy like I think Ladd McConkey could be more productive than Zay Jones. I think he would complement Gabe Davis and also Christian Kirk significantly well. Just with how easy he's able to get open, I think he's going to support Trevor Lawrence a lot. So I think going with Ladd McConkey here, I think is a very serious option. I know they signed receivers as well, but here then with Cincinnati, Olu falling all the way down to Cincinnati. Just made too much sense here. I know they have Orlando Brown Jr., but I think he can kick in to right tackle as well, or potentially be a swing tackle and have him be developed. And Orlando Brown Jr., I know they signed him last year, but there's a lot of top-heavy money. If he doesn't perform well and Olu is performing better, like you can put him in, and I think you can cut Orlando Brown or trade him and not lose too much of the cap space. So sitting here now at the New York Jets pick. Have them going with Byron Murphy, defensive tackle. One of the things I think they did end up losing, pretty sure, they ended up losing Sheldon Rankins in the offseason. And so that is a guy I think maybe could replace here. It's provide just some good overall more support, have the defensive line be as strong as possible, just because we still don't know what this New York Jets offense is going to be like under Aaron Rodgers. It absolutely should be better than last year's offense. So that defense, though, still needs to be top-notch because that's what was keeping them in a lot of games. So sitting here now at 20. I've gone offensive line, I think, every single time with them, maybe even a corner. I'd have to go back and double-check. But it's primarily a JPJ spot. But I think one of the things that the Steelers don't really have is another receiver. I know they signed Van Jefferson, and then they got Cordell Patterson as well. But I don't really – those guys are not going to be world beaters. I think you go get a guy like Brian Thomas Jr., have him be opposite of George Pickens. I actually really like that overall matchup. That overall receiving duo as well. Just George Pickens, I think, is going to be your more typical X guy, while Brian Thomas Jr. is going to be your deep threat guy. It's going to be a lot of underneath opportunities for Pat Freiermuth and then all the other receivers as well. Moving on now to Miami. I'm lucky I actually hadn't really done this pick yet. I think you've done this pick here, but Jatavian Sanders, I think, going to Miami. I know they got Jonnu Smith, but Jonnu Smith's going to be more of your traditional type tight end. I think Jatavian Sanders, I think, could come in and be that slot receiver. I think he could complement Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle extremely well. Moving on now to Philadelphia. So one of the things, as of right now, on the receiving room for Philadelphia, it goes A.J. Brown, and these are the starters: A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and then Devontae Parker, who they signed out of New England. Ryan, what are your thoughts on Devontae Parker? Exactly.
Do you want to be serious? Or
No. That's all I needed. So I actually have them going with A.D. Mitchell here. I think solidifying that receiving trio room. You got Saquon Barkley. You started offensive line is going to need a little bit of replenishing. This is a deep. I think they have 2 second-round picks. I think they can address the offensive line, potentially even move up to go and get an offensive tackle or maybe an interior offensive lineman to help replace Jason Kelsey or just maybe get a guy to help prepare for whenever Lane Johnson also moves on. So I think you go and address the receiving room right now just with how good A.D. Mitchell is. I think he'd fit Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown really well. Here at Minnesota, their second first-round pick. I also made it a rule for myself to not include any of the other players that Minnesota has done throughout all their 11 drafts, throughout the drafts, even at pick 11. So this one I had to go with something different as well than what Minnesota has done. And I actually had them going with Jared Verse here. Surprised actually I hadn't picked them, but I think most of the time Jared Verse had been taken off the board by the time Minnesota had picked. But I think this would be great for the Brian Flores defense, and specs wise, he's almost the exact same height and weight as Danielle Hunter as well. It plays kind of the same way as him, so I think he'd be an immediate kind of clone replacement, and you can kind of have him start rebuilding from there. Here with Atlanta, I really like them if Atlanta could get 23rd overall pick with Minnesota with the trade coming up. I actually really like them going with Nate Wiggins here, address that corner spot. I think Atlanta has pretty good success with Clemson corners. I'd have to double check that. but I think you get Nate Wiggins in there, and I think I believe they'd be set in the quarterback room with him, AJ Terrell. Then you got Jesse Bates in the backfield as well, and then even the D'Amico Helms guy, the 7th-round pick from last year, started to play well. Clark Phillips from Utah. He is smaller, so that's why I think he can kick into nickel. I think he's going to be more of a nickel guy. But in the second half of the season, when Jeff Okudah was hurt, he actually played extremely well. So that's your secondary right there for Atlanta. And I really like them too. Our linebacker room with Troy Anderson's coming back. Nate Landman had an amazing season, but came out of nowhere. I think Hayden Ellis as well. And if we could just get some edge rushers, please re-sign Calais Campbell. I think that would be amazing for the team. So wrapping up here now. At 25, Green Bay Packers having to go with Graham Barton. They did lose John Runyon and a couple other offensive linemen as well. So I think just getting some more offensive lineman depth, help protecting Jordan Love. You have Josh Jacobs back there. And Josh Jacobs, when his best season ever was when he had a dominant offensive line in front of him. And most running backs need that, but Josh Jacobs is also, too, a special talent as well. So if you can get that good line in front of him, we all know that he is capable of that 1,700-yard rushing season. So at 26 for Tampa Bay here, JPJ, I think replacing Ryan Jansen as a center here. This one was actually pretty easy. If he does fall, we've been high on Jackson Powers-Johnson. Normally he's not available here. Zach Frazier is available here. And honestly, in that 3-round mock draft, I think a lot of Tampa Bay Buccaneers fans commented. I think that they were right. We actually passed on Zach Frazier.
Yeah, we did.
So with Jackson Powers-Johnson here, I think you got to take him. This is actually, I think, a very legit pick if JPJ does fall to them. So sitting here now with Arizona, I had a similar rule as well as I had with Minnesota, as I had to pick different players. But if I'm being honest, most of those players were going to be Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malik Neighbors going at 4 overall. So I didn't have to worry too much about copying players. So also, I think addressing the center position as well, I have them going with Zach Frazier here. Address that interior offensive line. They made a lot of moves on the offensive line so far. Paris Johnson Jr. Drafted him last year. And then who was the guy?
Jonah Williams.
Yeah. And then they just signed Jonah Williams as well. So they still have Kelvin Beachum also as well to be that swing tackle. So I think that this solidifying that offensive line in front of Calvin Murray. Kyler Murray. I don't know where Kelvin came from. Anyways, so now here at Los Angeles Chargers, Jim Harbaugh, I think, has a lot of guys he potentially could draft with his new team because they need a lot of skill position players, one of which is going to be receiver. I have them going with Roman Wilson here. I think he'd actually be a pretty good complement to what they already have with Quentin Johnson and also Josh Palmer as well. And so I think he could be a guy that Justin Herbert can really lean on and rely on as well. And he's familiar with working with Jim Harbaugh, so I think that could be a potential option. Last couple here. Have Detroit Lions going with Leatu Latu, edge rusher. I actually really like this pick overall. Put him opposite side of Aiden Hutchinson. I know they got Marcus Davenport in free agency, but he's older. It's just on a 1-year deal. I think Leatu Latu could be a guy that you put him and Aiden Hutchinson across from one another for the next couple of years. And I think it's going to be a great combination for the Lions and not for opposing teams. Baltimore Ravens here. I didn't realize it, but J.C. Latham fell down this far. And I think with how much the Ravens lost in the offseason when it came to offensive lineman members, Morgan Moses, John Simpson, Kevin Zeitler. I think offensive line is going to be a huge one, a huge position that they address multiple times in this draft. So going with J.C. Latham here, going and getting a guy to replace Morgan Moses. San Francisco 49ers, another team that actually lost a lot of defensive line overall. And so just looking at it, Jersey Newton still being here, that was pretty much a no-brainer. And then lastly, with the Kansas City Chiefs, I had gone either offensive lineman or I'd gone receiver for all their picks. So I try to look on the opposite side. And one of the things, Charles Omenihu tore his ACL in the playoffs. So his status will have to be just kind of up in the air. And I think a guy with a lot of upside is going to be a guy like Chop Robinson here. And you put him across from or just on that defensive line with Chris Jones, who brings so much attention and how explosive Chop Robinson can be. I really like that fit. He'll need some development. I know they got they drafted some edge rushers recently in the past with their first overall pick, but he's more that modern day edge rusher, kind of TJ Watt outside linebacker esque. So anyways, that was this. I think my fun mock draft, so to say. Next one will be much more serious. The one that I will be putting money on, saying like, "Hey, I think this is going to be the guys that will be selected in this order." But this was a lot of fun. Kind of made me think differently about some of these other team needs, and also, or maybe too, just to come up with excuses for why I think why I think these guys should be drafted. So let me know in the comments on what your thoughts are. Obviously, like I don't think Jaden Daniels is going to go first overall, but let's just kind of play in that world a little bit. How would that look? Potentially, and then does Chicago want to pair him up with his teammate if he does fall just far enough to where they get some draft capital? But Ryan, I want to throw it over to you. What are your overall thoughts?
No, I enjoyed it. It was fun kind of going and trying to think of players who you might not have drafted before for those teams. And honestly, there were a few picks that I really liked. Like we kind of already went through the first 16 picks, so I'll start here at 17. But Ladd McConkey, I like being that separator. To me, I think him and Zay Jones would be duking it out for the reps. And like from there, Olu Fashanu to the Bengals makes sense. I think investing that offensive line. Trent Brown is their right tackle right now, and he is coming from the Patriots, and I can tell you right now he is going to be a question mark every single week. And his biggest thing is just effort. And then going down, I could see Brian Thomas Jr. to the Steelers. I could see Byron Murphy to the Jets if they trade down. I like the Jatavian Sanders pick. I've been saying that since like January. That the Dolphins should go after a super athletic tight end to threaten the middle of the field. And like all these picks I think make sense. Maybe Ladd McConkey's like a little high, but honestly, I think he's a first round talent. So taking them there in the middle of the first round, I think isn't the worst reach ever. Even though I'm assuming you only took him because you had Brian Thomas Jr. going to the Jags in a previous mock.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, but to be honest, though, we saw this last year with the Lions and Jack Campbell. Is if you value a guy as a first-round talent, but you feel he's not going to be there for the next pick, and he's one of the top on your board, like I don't think that's too much of a reach for Jacksonville to do that. Now, if you're like Atlanta at 8, okay, maybe that's a little bit of a reach. Kind of finagle your way up there if you want to trade out for him, but. I think with Jacksonville, or just something like that. I'm all for guys reaching if it's within the same, if it's confident, it's before their next pick. Unlike, just for example, I know we poke fun at you a lot, but like the Cole Strange pick, like that was excessive. You know what I mean? Like that was a reach.
That's one of the all-time worst picks.
But would it was interesting just to kind of go and see, and even to maybe Zach Frazier's a little bit high, have 2 centers go in the first round. So that'll be very interesting just to kind of see. However, though, but that is a major need for the Cardinals team.
I agree. And it's also 2 centers that can play guard. Like they're not just.
They have that versatility. Yeah. So that's a really good point as well.
Yeah. So, and then Roman Wilson, I think maybe is a little high, but I think really he's in consideration for the Panthers at 33. So even like from 33 to 28, that's 5 picks. So I don't know if I have him that high. I think I might have him in the middle of the second round, but like, again, nothing too egregious. So all in all, this was pretty entertaining to watch. So let's go ahead and wrap up this mock draft here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below on what you thought of Tyler's mock draft. Did you love it? Did you hate it? I would say, what would you do differently? But this mock draft was already pretty different. So let us know your thoughts down below on Tyler's mock draft, and that we'll see you guys next time.